So it is 4:01. So we'll go ahead and get started because I want to respect everybody's time. I've really appreciated receiving feedback from those of you who participated in past workshops, and we're going to incorporate that as we go because I like to be a lifelong learner and keep moving things along. So tonight we're going to expect a little bit more interaction because I feel like we learn best when we learn from multiple sources. And so you are multiple sources tonight. So we're going to learn from all of you and share in that discussion a little bit more. I'm going to introduce myself really quickly and then also introduce Dawn Flood. I'm going to ask Bill, would you please mute yourself? And then we will continue to ask people to unmute when they want to speak. So my name is Ruth Schwendinger, and I get to be a program coordinator with Prevention Network. I think I recognize just about everybody on the call, but I want to give you a special welcome and let you know that I'm thankful that you're here today. It's been a rough day for me. I deal with chronic pain, and it really knocked me out most of the day. So as we go into this session, I just want to remind you that oftentimes we're all encountering and interacting with people who are dealing with battles we know nothing about. And so we're going to continue to have grace. We're going to continue to be considerate of others and give them extra time to think and respond before we provide them with the answers that we think that we would expect from their perspective. And that is especially important when we're working with youth, because I am probably the most impatient person I know and quick to jump to conclusions. And that is really detrimental when we're working with youth, as we learned from our conversation with Dawn Flood on the Prevention Navigators podcast. So Dawn, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself, and then we can just go ahead and open up the discussion. Either I can do a recap of what we talked about in the past, or we can just open it up, whatever you would be most comfortable with.
Probably a recap just to kind of get everybody on the same page. But thank you. So my name is Dawn Flood, and I'm the program director for the organization called Student Leadership Services, or the acronym SLS, which many of you might have heard about. And what I do is I work with middle school and high school students all across the state of Michigan. We do curriculum programming, but we also do 2 student-led programs that are ours and that have been evaluated and have been listed on the NREP site. Our high school program is Students Leading Students, and our middle school program is Students Taking a New Direction, or the acronym STAND. And so my background is I'm a licensed master's in social work, as well as a certified CPC. And I've been in the prevention field for about 24 years now, working with middle school through college age students.
Thank you. And I want to ask people to please introduce themselves, either live in person or not in person, obviously, sorry, brain fog. Virtually, just go ahead and take yourselves off mute, or you can also, please do also put it in the chat box along with your email address and the organization that you're here hoping to improve their capacity. So I'm gonna give you a minute to think about how you would like to introduce yourself while I talk about why we're here tonight. So we're here because we want to build capacity, and capacity is one of those things that happens on multiple levels. We can build individual capacity through training or developing skills, just basic knowledge. We can build coalition capacity, and our coalitions are really a network of people working together from different lanes, from different experiences and different expertise toward the same goals. And so our coalitions are made up of many different people with many different resources. And when we join together in that formal network of a coalition, we're sharing resources and we're sharing goals. And then lastly, we can build capacity at a community level. So when we have a college campus and they are all of the students and teachers are aware of the multiple resources for mental health and suicide prevention and substance misuse prevention. They're aware of a strong fraternal and fraternity and sorority system, and they're aware of active volunteer opportunities and extra skill supports for education, that would be a really healthy community. That would be a strong community with high capacity. So when we're talking about capacity building, we can talk about physical structure at a community level with safe places to go, but we can also talk about a general knowledge and awareness of what resources are out there. And we can also talk about an understanding of those social norms. You know, whether it's, 73% of high school students don't vape, or whatever it is, you're in the majority when you're making these healthy choices. And help people really understand what is acceptable behavior and what is common behavior as well. So there's different ways we can build capacity. So at this point, I see several things in the chat box. I'm going to zip it and allow you all the opportunity to introduce yourselves. And I'm going to ask, I'm going to go around my screen first and say, Bill, would you like to introduce yourself? And then we're going to play tag. You can tag team somebody else on your screen. So everybody has to pay attention. And I'm sorry, I am going to unmute you again.
You're right, and thank you. You can hear me now. I'm Bill Amundson, retired United Methodist clergy, board member and treasurer of the Michigan Council on Alcohol Problems. And we've been struggling for many years and seem unable or have been unable to grow capacity for our group. And so when this opportunity came up, Mike Tobias and I jumped at it, and the board is behind us, and we want to grow and we want to continue. Chris, I think you're the only other guy here on, and so I'm going to tag you at this point.
There, that was tough. Okay, so this is not a pain-free day. Yeah, my name is Chris. I'm a prevention specialist in Albion, Michigan, serving Eastern Calhoun County. Work for substance abuse prevention services.
Thank you, Chris.
And I will tag Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Phelps. I work at Sand Lake County Community Mental Health, but I chair the Sand Lake County Prevention Network, and I'm working hopefully with a couple of my colleagues to build our capacity in the prevention network. We're a pretty loosely knit group right now, and I'd like to see us just have a more focused and secure way of doing things.
Great. Do you want to tag somebody else?
Oh, Amanda Russell.
Hi, I'm Amanda Russell. I work for Sacred Heart Rehabilitation Center in Bay City. I'm the prevention activities coordinator there. And I'm also just now the past co-chair of the Bay County Prevention Network. So I'm sitting on for them to bring some information back to our coalition. We have a pretty good group and have quite a few partners, but just seeing how we can grow and also work with our students to get more involved in the stuff that we're branching out and that we would like to do. Sorry, I'm sure you can probably hear my kids. I will tag Ashley.
Thank you, Amanda.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley. I am the coalition manager at Prevention Works for Kalamazoo County. And I'm excited to be here. I saw Ruth's email come through just because I am always looking for new strategies with youth. I have a youth coalition, and as we all know, it's helpful to just continue learning, and especially from our peers who are doing things really well. So I'm excited to be here, and I will go ahead and tag Paige.
Thanks, Ashley.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paige George. I'm with the Southline Community Coalition. We just started not too long ago, so we are a learning coalition, and I'm just trying really hard to get our name out in the community, making little baby steps and anxious to take giant strides. So I take a lot of notes and I'm taking it all in, and I appreciate everybody's input and help. I'm going to tag Amanda O.
Thank you, Paige. We're glad you're here.
Hi. So I'm Amanda Oldine. I'm the Director of Youth Prevention and Outreach at the Boys and Girls Club. So I manage a couple of grants. We have a SOAR grant there. So we are providing substance use prevention programming for teens throughout Lenawee County. We have been working with schools mostly. So we are really definitely trying to build more strategies around engaging schools, engaging teachers and administrative staff, which has definitely proven to be a challenge, especially sort of during this time of COVID. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
I look forward to having that discussion about how to engage administrators and how to be effective in getting your foot in the door. So we're still missing a few people, Amanda.
Sorry, forgot. Okay, so I will tag Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Taylor. I'm Prevention Network's new intern. So I'm currently a student at Central Michigan University, and I plan to graduate in May with a degree in public health education. So thanks for having me.
Allison is being an integral part of our strategic planning process. And so it's great to have her here as well on multiple levels, not just as an intern, but just to have another mind that works in a strategic way. It's great to have that in the office as well. Allison, who would you like to tag?
I'm going to tag Luis.
Hi, everyone. Louise Montag, Executive Director at Prevention Network. And I am really excited to be here primarily to listen. I always jump at the opportunity to take a step back and to hear what other coalitions are doing and what other people are doing, because I think that's really important and helpful, as well as to learn additional tips, resources, information, whatever that can be further shared with, that's shared among this group, but also can be shared beyond with others. So thank you all. And I will pass it to Brooke, I think.
Thank you, Louise.
Working. Okay. Thanks so much, Louise. My name is Brooke Habe. I work for the Boys and Girls Club of Lenawee. I work with Amanda, and I am the Project Youth Prevention Coordinator Manager, something like that. But I help facilitate the grants that Amanda directs, and we are trying to engage schools within our community. And so really just kind of looking forward to hearing some ways to effectively do that, because as Amanda said, it's challenging. So I think Ashley, was that everyone?
I think that's everybody.
Okay.
So thank you, Brooke. And you sound like me when I started, less than 6 months ago, trying to figure out what my title is and how to introduce myself. So while I'm relatively new to this position, I started working with youth when I was in high school, volunteering at a summer camp, counseling there. It was a faith-based camp, and I got several years of experience working with young people there. I grew up in a home with a person in recovery. I didn't know it at the time, but I had the serenity prayer on the wall my whole life. And so that impacted me from an early age. And I recognized the value of using different strategies and having different supports for young people. As I was growing up, I developed an interest in serving in the recovery community. I developed an interest in learning about the human brain and why it does the things it does. I ended up studying psychology at the University of Northern Iowa, and then moving out to Oregon, where I got to work at an addictions recovery center. So I really started understanding the intricacies of what recovery is and falling in love with the recovery community, right? Recognizing that these are human beings. These are people who, due to circumstances and choices, and some of that's within their control and some is not. And we're still understanding, kind of the biological factors of trauma and how that's passed on from generation to generation. But I got to see that firsthand and see recovery, see people succeed and take a hand in that. After that, I got to move to Omaha area in Nebraska and start working at Boys Town National Research Hospital, and working in the intensive residential treatment center for youth. So we were implementing those treatment plans and working with youth on their behavioral health goals and helping them be accountable 24/7 in a locked facility. We provided safe sleep environment, breakfast in the mornings, took them to their classrooms that were still in the facility, took them on outings and things like that, in the hopes to help them continue to develop those behavioral health skills to be able to lead happy and successful and healthy and fulfilling lives. That was incredibly challenging, but I learned a lot. And I learned more than anything, the resiliency of youth, because here you're looking at individuals who've just been through the ringer. And this is the highest level of care. So we're talking about people who really had the worst breaks, the worst experience. Maybe they don't know how to respect themselves, and they certainly don't respect adults. And so really working with them to develop and understand how do we engage with youth at all levels of ability, and recognizing that. From there, I got to move to Michigan. And so I started working at the Community Mental Health Association in Huron County, which is right at the tip of the thumb. I got to work in a town called Bad Axe, which is probably the best name I've ever heard for a town. And I got to do the prevention specialist work there. So working with the coalitions, working with the schools to identify curriculums, working with a lot of different groups in building up their awareness of what prevention is and what it can be in our communities. So, and then less than 6 months ago, I started working with Louise at Prevention Network. And the whole goal of this program, like I said at the beginning, is capacity building. And we're looking at that from many different levels. But just as a recap for those who this might be your first time at a workshop, so far we've talked about, based on the strategic planning or prevention framework, the SPF SPIF, we've talked about what does coalition structure look like, and how do we get there. We've talked about board structure and management a little bit, as far as what policies and procedures need to be in place. What do those bylaws, core concepts look like? And then we've talked about, last time we kind of laid the foundation for youth engagement and what it should look like. What are those key components, as far as, if we are doing our jobs correctly, what does that look like for the youth? And we really emphasize that it needs to be youth led. I had a conversation yesterday with a lady who's planning to apply for our grant programs, and I just reminded her that if it's not youth led, it is adult led. So seeking youth input is not enough. And so when we're going into this process, there's a lot of little nuggets of, well, I'm just going to do my job to the best of my ability because that's what I can do. Or I'm going to work with the students that are most excited about leadership or building up their resume because those are the ones that are easily accessible to me. And when we do that, we're not being effective. And so I want to pass it over to Dawn at this point and really talk about, what does it take to be effective when we're inviting youth into that space. I did also recap just creating that safe space, listening, empowering the youth, and then encouraging the youth in that final step. The hardest part is letting go once they graduate through the programs. And so that final step is continuing in a mentorship role, encouraging them to stay engaged in whatever community they find themselves in next.
Okay, so can you repeat the first question that you wanted me to?
How are you today? No, I can't. How do we be effective at working with youth?
Okay, yeah, so I think you had asked, I think the question you asked was about recruiting youth, I think was the line you used at the beginning of that. Was it recruitment?
It could be, I don't know.
Okay, all right. Well, one of the things that I do when I approach let me kind of start the foundation, approach a school about student-led programming is because I noticed that was a lot of questions that you had was how do you approach the administration, especially today in COVID, and the administration doesn't want one more thing on their plate, a lot, as well as the teachers and stuff. Is that a hurdle that a lot of you are? Okay, all right. I'm seeing head shakes, so okay, all right. You're not alone. Okay, but one of the things that I find that is helpful for the administration, for them to get you in the door and actually listen to you, is to connect what it is you have to offer with what their school needs. And one of the ways that I do that is how do the programming that I run connect to their school improvement plan? How does it connect to socio-emotional learning? Because all of the school districts are heavy into that right now. So connecting what your program does and the outcomes of your program to those core things that the school district needs. So school improvement plan, even the Michigan model, because if the school districts are using the Michigan model, how does it correlate to that and enhance the Michigan model that the districts might already be using? And social emotional learning is huge right now. And so even the Michigan top 10, okay, that the districts are into. So the groundwork kind of starts a little bit on looking at what those key things are for the particular district that you're targeting, and then connecting that to your program. So once you, yeah.
What are those questions we should be asking? Because when we're going in and we want to be involved and we want to support, we should be asking specific questions about, like, how do you implement the Michigan model and things like that. So, because we don't want to go in and say, hey, we have the answers to all of your problems. We want to figure out what the problems are first, right?
Right. So yeah, so you can start by asking the question, does your district use the Michigan model? Because not all districts have to, okay? It's Michigan model is still kind of choice. You can ask them, do they use any socio-emotional learning modules? So asking those questions, what are they already have in place at their school? That's the first question. Because if you're going in with something that they already have, then you're going to get shut down right away. So asking those questions right off the bat.
So another thing that is really a hot button right now is if schools are implementing the MyFi and using that as a data collecting source. And right now, some are just saying it's too much, we're not.
Right.
And so if we're looking at an ideal world, we would love to be able to have free access to the schools and have all the data we want and have great relationships with everybody. If it's an either or, would you recommend backing off of offering programs and really just focusing on implementing the MyFi for this year?
It depends on what your goals are. If your goals are that, and every coalition, every agency is different in terms of what are their particular goals. So if the MyFi is your particular goal, then go down that direction. If programming is your main goal, and getting the programming to the students, and getting the outcomes of the skill-based, then go down that.
I know the PIHP coordinators are really focused in on a couple of different elements, and the MiFi is one of them for this year because so many of us depend on that data. And
Right.
so recognizing that, yes, our ultimate long-term goals are prevention, serving the community, serving youth, but we might need to reassess those goals for now and recognize that, you know, not just are we in unprecedented times, but we need to respond to those in meaningful ways and understand that there are limitations, not just on ourselves, not just on our partners at health departments and things like that, but also with the schools. And make sure that there's an open door there, but don't try to force anything if it's just not going to happen too. So
Right.
I had another question here, and I don't want to move away from the school administration yet because I want to focus on different options and different opportunities to engage there. When we're first getting started, like Paige, if there's no relationship there with the school at all, how would you go about getting a relationship or starting that? Oftentimes I'll ask if I can figure out when the principal's meetings are or superintendent's meetings are, and then ask if I can attend and listen. And then follow up with whoever's taking minutes and say, hey, that was great. Would it be all right? How do I get on the agenda? I would love to share a little bit about what our agency does next time there's an opportunity. Would that be okay? And then eventually you'll find an ally there, right?
Sometimes it's helpful too to find an ally in the school, perhaps that isn't necessarily the principal right away. So one of the avenues that I kind of look for is I kind of go through the school counselors, the school social workers, like that, because sometimes that's an easier entrance. If you can get a connection with them, have a conversation about who you are, what you offer, and then they can kind of be the advocate, and then they can kind of, you know, help guide you and set up the initial meeting. So sometimes that's a kind of easier entrance because the administration is so busy.
Right, right. Kelly, you had your hand up. I want to encourage everybody, if you haven't already, to go ahead and put your name and email in the chat box, your organization, but also because we're changing the format here a little bit, if you have something to say, go ahead and unmute yourselves and raise your hand, get our attention, and speak up, because we are hoping to learn from you too.
Thank you, Ruth. Paige, I really appreciate you because I have been learning so much over these last few weeks because, you know, our prevention network has just done more educational and, you know, surface things. So this has been a real deep dive for us. So I'll look forward to learning and growing with you. What I wanted to ask, you kind of answered already, Dawn. It was suggested to me because I don't have a lot of relationships with our schools as well. I do have members on our network that know more of the school personnel. And it was suggested that we draw in the social workers from the area. For us, it's like 7 school districts because we're such a small population. So, but I was concerned about offending administration by going to the social workers and not coming to them. So that really does help to have those allies within the school and kind of hear from them and let that chatter start before we go into you know, an administrative meeting. And that's the other thing I was going to suggest. If you know somebody, if you have somebody else on your network or, you know, in your coalition who does have those relationships, you know, that can help open that door even more. And then the other thing I was just going to say is that for our first engagement with the schools, we're not going to have an ask of coming into the school and doing something. We're looking at doing a parent and youth event targeted at those youth at risk and involved in the social service system in some way this summer. And then the ask for the schools is going to hopefully be allowing us to connect with these youth throughout the school year to see how they're doing, with the tools that we've hopefully imparted into them. So rather than trying to come into the school and asking for time away now. So
Most schools have that easy way to share information, and that is the very basic entry level way to start partnerships that you hope will build up into the future. But that's a great way to engage, is to say, hey, just so you know, we're doing this, we're targeting some of your students, and we wanted you to be aware. One of the things that, if you have students in your bubble, so I have a 12 and a 16-year-old boy, and oftentimes when I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the schools, or if I'm looking for a connection there, some place to start, I can ask, and it doesn't have to be your own kids, it can be a neighbor kid or somebody at church or whoever. Who do you feel comfortable talking to at school? Who's your safe person? Like, if you had something going on, who would you go to? Do you like hanging out in so-and-so's room at lunch? Are there places and ways that you connect for support that are already in place? And maybe we can formalize some of those. Maybe we can offer additional support and come alongside and enhance what they're already doing. Maybe they are already doing some amazing prevention work, but they don't have resources. Maybe they're paying out of their pocket for pizzas after school for the middle schoolers, right? Let's see what we can do to come alongside what's already happening. Anything else on schools? Other questions? Amanda, you said you've been really working in that space for a while.
Yeah, well, so I really like the idea of building relationships and building that up and taking the time to do that. And we are certainly putting effort into that. I think the challenge we face is that our thing is very time sensitive. Like we don't necessarily have that, like this big front end time of building that relationship without having that ask, because it's like we have a year to get this program completed, right? So we have this grant and we have deadlines. So there's like that pressure of the grant. So the pressure of meeting those goals, but also wanting to respect that relationship with the people at the school, right? I don't want to be the person that just comes in there and says like, all right, I have this program for you, let's run it. No, I'd rather sit down and talk to them and see what they need and build that relationship. So I think that's a struggle. Like
Relationships are critical when we're doing prevention, though. So at some point,
yeah.
I respect that those grant deadlines, very much respect those grant deadlines. But if you're not able to implement the program with fidelity, with youth input up front, you might contact your funder and say, we need to make some adjustments. Is this possible? A lot of times people, when we're working with grants and funders, we think, well, there's no flexibility here. This is what they wrote. This is what they want. This is what I have to do. And there really doesn't have to be that way. And it doesn't hurt to ask. And if you go to your funder and say, look, we want to do this within the year that you've given us, we plan to. Do you have any suggestions in how to advance the timeline? Or are there modifications we can make to what you're telling us we need to do so that we can do this right? Because we want to have the biggest impact. Brooke, do you have input on that too? Or?
So again, I'm still trying to figure out kind of how to get into the schools or engage with the teachers to set up meetings. I kind of just did this like mass mailing of an introduction letter of myself and our program and what we have to offer. I sent it out to everyone from the superintendent to health teachers and kind of everything in between. We did get quite a few responses of like, yeah, I'm interested in your program. I'd like to set up a meeting. And I'll respond back like, yeah, let's set up a meeting. And then we just can't seem to get past that point. So, and then I've also heard from teachers that, of course, what was mentioned earlier about the SEL programs, that there's a big push for them, and some teachers are just really feeling overwhelmed with the things that they're being asked to do. And so, you know, this is another thing that they feel like they're being asked to do. So, and that's, you know, without even having a meeting to like actually ask them. So sometimes it can be a little disheartening when, you know, you get these responses, but then there's nothing
No
kind of
follow through.
Yeah.
What really is helpful when you're trying to build momentum, especially at the start of a program, is to just focus on the end goal. What are those shared values? We want to take care of the youth that you are taking care of too. We want to make sure that their needs are being met. And really start on that shared ground. And if you can't get a meeting together with everybody, have one-on-one phone conversations. Do what needs done to make sure that you've started that relationship off on the right foot. Don't wait for trying to think we need to get everybody at the table at the same time. That's just not practical right now. So Dawn, you're nodding and shaking your head along with me. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah, so that and persistence. It really is persistence on our end with the patients, you know, that, you know, whenever they do have time, you know, you're here, you have these services and these programs that you want to be able to offer their students, you know, when they're ready. Okay, because that's the thing too, what I find. If the school feels like I'm pushing too hard, then they're just going to automatically turn you off. They're automatically gonna say no. And then, as Ruth said, you know, don't try to get everybody at the table at the same time. You only need one that you can have a conversation with, because then you build a relationship and they become your ally. The other thing too, and someone said, I think Brooke said this, that the teachers are so overwhelmed. Absolutely. So one of the things that we have to do when we are approaching a school is we have to make it easy for them. We have to let them know we're not asking you to do this. We are going to do it. It's going to be us, okay? Because that's the big thing. Because as soon as you start to say we have this program, they start thinking, oh, one more thing I have to do. But if you come out and say, we will come in and do it, you know, with the students, it'll be us. Then they're more likely to kind of step back and say, okay, tell me more. So it's a little on the approach, but also you have to have patience. Believe me, these last 2 years, I think we all have a master's degree in patience.
And part of our,
Go ahead.
sorry. Oh, and part of our program, because we did, I will say the first grant year was very successful. We surpassed our goal and we got additional grant funding. So it was successful, which probably puts even more pressure on this year. But part of our grant is trying to get teachers trained in facilitating. So part of it is we are giving them something else to do, which is, so I think that's, you know, that's also a challenge in that what we are trying to do is kind of adding something on their plate.
Yeah, so again, depends on the program that you're using, right? And what you're trying to do, because every organization is different. So in that aspect, yeah, you are asking something, you know, of the teachers. And so one of the things that as humans is we always have to think about the WIFM effect. So WIFM stands for what's in it for me. So whenever we approach, and it doesn't matter if it's an adult or a student, whenever we approach somebody and ask them something that we want them to do, we have to be able to let them know what's in it for them, okay? Because their time's valuable too.
Yeah.
And because you're part of a
them for it.
coalition, Amanda, because if you're part of a coalition, you can say, what else can we do to take the load off some of our teachers as a coalition? Because you have access to all these different agencies, all these different resources, and ask the teachers, I understand and recognize I'm adding a burden to what you're doing. We're asking this from you. What can we do for you? What can we maybe take off your plate? And Dawn, we had success, and I say we, but it was our health department went in and had that conversation of, we're not asking you to do this, but we can come in and teach the SUD part of the Michigan model in your health classes. And then your health teacher can just be in the room and use that as a planning period, right? And so different things like that, be flexible as much as you can. But I do want to move on and gonna give Louise a chance to talk because she's taken herself off mute a couple times. No, you're good? Okay.
Okay.
Paige,
Yeah.
Paige, you had your hand up. Did you get your thought resolved? Okay. Traditionally, prevention has happened in the schools or with after-school programs. Bill, Kelly, you guys are looking at doing programming, and Chris, you're looking at doing programming outside of schools. And so I want to take a moment and shift the conversation so that we're looking at what's happening outside of the schools. Where are those locations? Where are those opportunities for us to come alongside people who are already serving youth? You guys said you're with Boys and Girls Club, and you're doing this in the schools, but you also have the Boys and Girls Club. Is that outside of the schools? And where are those places in your communities that you can engage youth outside of schools, because they're very much overwhelmed right now. Everyone involved in schooling is. Thoughts? Where can you engage students?
Well, we have the Boys and Girls Club. So we engage a lot of our kids here, which is nice that we have access to them right here where we work. And we've been, we don't, honestly, here we don't have, this is like really the after school programming we have in our community is the Boys and Girls Club. We don't have a lot of things for them, but we do have a lot of people who are engaged in, they engage with sports a lot. So we've been building relationships with, not me specifically, but people in our club have been building relationships with a lot of coaches and things like that. So we can engage with students in that capacity. And we've been building a relationship with the probate court as well. So we've been engaging kids out of school who have who are on probation right now. So those are sort of the realms that we've been in outside of school.
Okay. Yeah, and some of those extracurricular clubs like sports, really easy transition into, hey, can I present for 10 minutes at the beginning of the year parent meeting? I want to talk about sports injuries and opioids. Let's talk about this, right? Or can we talk about whatever the issues are in your community? For me, that's what it was. And that's a really easy ask. And again, you're looking for that shared ground. So if you're looking at probate, you're saying, look, we recognize that these are highly at-risk individuals. Our prevention ethics teach us that we need to help these individuals develop those life skills that they may be missing. We want to provide them with safe alternative activities that are substance and alcohol free, right? And so really recognizing where that shared ground is, and continue to go in with that same questions that Dawn said at the beginning of, what are your needs? Because they might need extra drug testing kits. Is that something that your grant would cover, right? They might need childcare or transportation so that youth can get to meetings, right? Do you have extra gas cards or bus passes? Transportation is one of the biggest challenges that people are experiencing across rural Michigan. The biggest challenge that I've heard of so far. And so as we're moving forward, keep in mind that prevention doesn't look like not using drugs. prevention looks like having healthy relationships, reliable transportation, a safe living environment, a steady income, a positive outlook on the future, a spiritual understanding that they have value, right? And moving forward with understanding that there are many different levels of overlap that you have with your community members, with those people who are also youth serving agencies. Paige, you have anything to share?
So we have I'm just going to call it the like Community Rec Association in Southline. And they like what I do, but they like what I do with their parameters and their guidelines and their sponsorships. And I just don't know how to get like past that. They understand this is benefit for everybody, all these programs I can offer and support for their kids, but man, they are just, it's been interesting. I thought it was, first initial meeting went really well. Other meetings, it was all give, like take. And I can't give them what they want. They want money, a lot of it. And I don't want to just like sever. So I'm struggling with them. I thought that would be a good alternative to the schools. And I'm not saying it won't be, but I'm just going to have to finesse that relationship and going forward. I'm not sure what to do with it.
Is that something, Dawn, is that something you would be able, or do you want me to find somebody who can give some one-on-one technical assistance there with Paige?
Yeah, I don't have that experience, Paige, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, anything that you can just like point in a direction sometime and I can have a conversation with somebody, I would appreciate that.
Well, let's try to troubleshoot that. Because I feel like that's we're going to get into some pretty heavy details in that situation. And I want to make sure that the information we share today is kind of broad scope, accessible to everybody. But yeah, make a note to call me tomorrow and we'll set something up.
Sounds good.
So where are those other locations, or maybe not a location, or maybe just a different environment where we can engage youth?
Well, one of the things that seems to work well too is because schools have extracurricular activities outside of sports. So, and they all call their group something else. You have the drama club, you have student council, you have key club, pals, all these names. And so one of the things that I do is I, again, do my research, find out what clubs are there. I contact the advisor of that club, and then I offer to come to their next meeting. And I say, I'll bring pizza. And then I come and I meet with them and I, have a conversation. What is their group about? And ask them, what is it that you need help with? And then I see where I can fit, and it starts there. Because they see you as a fun person. You're coming in with food, and then you're asking, the questions. Tell me about what you do in PALS, and all that stuff. And then you kind of say a little bit about things that you offer, and then you ask them, do you see a connection? But let them kind of come up with that. That seems to work well too.
The best conversationalists are very good about asking questions so that people talk about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, people love having the opportunity to talk to someone who's engaging and encouraging. And so I don't know, Ashley, Amanda, Bill, if you guys are in this situation at all, where you feel like there's nobody to talk to about what you're trying to do. It's really helpful to recognize that other people feel the same way. And it's on you as an adult to make an ally, to have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of, to just communicate with and check in and share those struggles on a regular basis.
Also youth groups, sorry, Amanda, youth groups at like churches and stuff too. Most churches have youth groups. So again, having that connection to them, because that's outside of school, and the programs and stuff that could benefit the students at the in the youth groups is another one.
Kind of those lines, we did just have a program in the elementary schools with Mr. Peace about look at the heart first and whatnot. He has big success with parochial schools.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, Paige, because yes, the private schools and the parochial schools, they don't seem to get the programming that the public schools do. So I'm glad you said that. So that is a target place to go, because public schools seem to be offered a lot of programming, and we kind of forget about the academies and the private schools and so forth. So that's another one. I'm glad you mentioned that, Paige, because they want the programming. They don't seem to get the opportunities.
When we're talking about engaging our faith communities, we need to remember that we're not just talking about churches, we're talking about mosques and synagogues and every faith organization, and don't go in with the assumption that if you see a kid that they have a youth group. Churches and mosques and synagogues have been hit hard by COVID as well, and a lot of those programs just completely shut down. So maybe targeting and making an invitation to a citywide or a county-wide gathering to those churches to invite their youth without necessarily those churches, synagogues, and mosques, without necessarily identifying or focusing on a youth group. And then again, recommend carpooling or something like that if it's COVID safe and COVID friendly.
I'm sorry, I have to go. I have a situation that came up, so.
Thank you, Amanda. We are
Yep.
recording. We'll share it in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Amanda, you came off mute for a second. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I know you have extra hands helping tonight.
Yeah, it was. One thing that has helped us with our youth, we are working with our career center, which is the ISD, that has, I think there's like 14 schools that filter into there now. From when I was there, I think it was only like 10. But we've been able to work with the law enforcement group there and some of the health classes there because they have HOSA and different programs that they compete in at the local level, the state level, and then if they make it to the national level. So we've been able.
I'm glad that your kiddo is feeling better, just so you know. Glad he's doing better.
Thanks. Yeah, it's crazy over here today.
So yeah, recognizing that within the school district, you don't have to necessarily focus on those individual schools either. So I guess I don't know, Brooke, if your grant focuses on specific schools, but recognizing that your tech center has a great opportunity, your tech centers have great opportunities to engage as well. In Huron County, we worked with the marketing class. Our health department worked with the marketing class to help develop materials and just kind of proofread those. And that was separate from the Youth Advisory Council that the district also ran. So you have different groups of youth that you can engage in different ways, play to their strengths, recognize that they're valued for different skills and abilities that they have, not just their age. And don't focus on people just because of their age. If you're in a room full of students and teachers and administrators and you're trying to get student input and a teacher has a great idea, praise and incorporate that too, right? But allow it to be student-led to the best of our abilities. Quick story here. So it is snow coming week at our school. The snow coming is unique to Michigan. I've never in my life heard of it before we moved to Michigan. So I asked my boys, what are the themes for this week? And yesterday's theme was for the high schoolers was Adam Sandler. I said, so are you gonna dress up? Are you gonna do anything? And he said to me, I don't know who Adam Sandler is. I did a quick Google search. Happy Gilmore, which I think is his most well-known film, came out in 1996. Gabe was born in 2005. I wonder who came up with that theme.
Sorry.
Anyway, that was a quick side note. I wanted to share that with you because I thought it was funny and really relevant to our discussion tonight. If you are offering a program, or you're offering an intervention, or you're offering an opportunity for people to engage in a national campaign like Red Ribbon Week, you really need to have them make it their own. You really need to ask if they want to be involved, because if you are doing things because you're funded to do them, or you're doing things because you think it's the right thing to do, your heart very well is in the right place. But if you don't have youth involvement and youth engagement from the start, from planning to implementation to evaluation at every level, you're missing the boat. And it really is important. I've been able to participate recently in some data training exercises with the PTTC. And they're helping us recognize that we need to incorporate our target audience at every level of data, as far as how do we format those questions? How do we phrase them in ways that get the answers we're looking for? How do we distribute those questions? How are we going to collect the information that we're looking for? Are we going to send out an email survey? Are we going to attach a gift card reward for people who participate? What type of incentive would be meaningful for the people that we're trying to get involved? How long should it be out there? And then also, not just in after we've gotten the information, we've collected the data, how do we interpret that? Are there things that we're not considering that are skewing the data one way or another, right? And then how do we present those results? We want to present them in a way that's fair and unbiased, but we also want to present them in a way that's meaningful, that helps us implement those changes we're looking for. Oh, Kelly. It's almost time to go home, isn't it? Her lights just went out in her office, just in case you aren't looking on the screen. Somebody's turning the lights out on her. So Amanda in the chat dropped in that we also work with our local SADD groups, or SAD groups, or try to work alongside groups that are already working in the schools instead of pushing for a whole other group. It has helped us tremendously because there are so many groups and extra activities kids can get involved in, and working with them has been great. And I just would applaud you in recognizing that, because we all have our limits. We can't be everything for everybody. It's important to keep in mind our ultimate goals. If our goal is to implement a program, then we've misplaced what's important. Our goal in prevention is to save lives, to improve the quality of the lives of those who we encounter. And so if we're focused on checking boxes or implementing a program, or meeting the grant deadlines and guidelines, we're missing the point. And we are more likely to get burnt out that way, in addition to being less effective. And when we get burnt out, when we stop being motivated by what's truly important, every single youth we're working with knows it. And I love my teenagers. I love the teenagers I've gotten to work with over the years. I love the little kids. My favorite group is the 3rd through 5th graders. But when they sense weakness, they will circle like sharks. So when we're doing youth engagement, make sure that you have the energy to get started. Make sure that you have somebody to bounce ideas off of. Make sure that you have an ally in place. And so when we're talking about those things, I want to pass it back to Dawn just for any other bits of wisdom, experience. What are those things practically that we should be doing when we're working with trying to engage youth more effectively?
One of the things is when you ask the question, make sure you listen to what they say, and follow through with what they want to do. Another thing too is when you're working with students, by asking them what kind of snack they want, rather than you just bringing the snack, goes a long way. I was at Boys and Girls Club doing a program yesterday after school. And the week before, I asked what kind of snacks you want. Well, they wanted Cheez-Its, apples, string cheese, Gatorade. And so I brought everything that they asked. And the boys said, it was middle school, the boys, mostly boys, and they said, we can't believe you actually listened and brought what we wanted. And so right there is huge. If you're going to ask the question, even if it's what kind of snacks, and they tell you, you better believe you have to do it. And that's one of the biggest things. Another thing too is working with students, believe it or not, have student-friendly food. Their students don't serve chicken cordon bleu for something, it's pizza they like, hot dogs, stuff like that. And so people that never worked with youth, they might not think that. So it's little things like that. But the biggest thing is listen to what they're saying and then follow through. Because once you do, even if just once, of bring in the apples, because they said they really liked apples, you got them. And it starts simple there. You have that relationship.
Love that you're giving them a simple choice that is easy for you to implement, that makes them recognize that you understand and value their input. Yes. I love that. And that's the easiest way to do it, is to start with snacks.
Yep.
And you said during our podcast talk, you said food and fun.
Yes.
Every single time.
Food and fun. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if they're in 5th grade or if they're a senior in high school, they like to have fun. They like to do crafts. They like stickers. They like to be a kid, even when they're 18 years old. And so whatever we're doing with students, make sure that's incorporated.
And I like to do a quick switch. You bring a group of students into a boardroom, they have agendas and minutes printed out in front of them, and then you invite them to make paper airplanes and race them across the room, right? If they're coming in expecting one thing, don't treat them as if they are adults, but also recognize that the adults we're working with at the end of the school day, at the end of the work day, we're tired. We need some encouragement. We need a few minutes to readjust and refocus on why we're here, right? Kelly, you've had your hand up for a minute.
Yeah, when talking about engaging students anytime, or the youth, when you're planning an activity for them, our committee is trying to figure out, so, we want the input from the schools, whether it's the social workers or admin or both, but we want the input also from the students, from the youth, about what are they concerned about? What would they like to learn about? So not only that, but also, what kind of fun activities would you like to do during this day? And I think that what I'm a little bit concerned about is what happens when you talk to the social workers or to the school and they have this list, then you talk to the youth and these are their concerns and they're totally different. You know what I'm saying? How do you, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Kelly. Okay, all right. So our job as the adults is to connect it for the social worker who doesn't see the connection to what the students are concerned about to what the data says, because there is a connection, 100%. So our job is to help connect and bridge that. So for example, okay, I was working with a group of students yesterday, and one of their concerns is the chaos in the hallway. Okay, the hallway is so crowded. There's a lot of swearing. It's the teachers don't do anything, so everybody's always late. There's no consequences. They're just fed up. These students are fed up with the chaos in the hallways. Okay, and so they want to change that. Now, how is that related to substance use prevention? Well, you have the stress. They're so stressed, okay, in the hallway. They're angry, okay, because they don't like the language that they're hearing. They're mad because, other people are making them late. So that's a direct connection to the behaviors that a student might participate in. And so our job is to help connect that with the data. How does them trying to change the climate in the hallway connected to students not using marijuana?
Okay, yeah, I think I
That makes sense?
Yes, yes.
Because there is. Marijuana is there, but right now in their mind, they got to get to class on time.
So the administration, you know, I can hear it now. Well, vaping is obviously a big problem in our school. And
Yes.
then the young people are saying, you know, the hallways are too crowded and I can't get to my locker in time. And, you know, the bathrooms are jammed up and there's all these outside stressors. And okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank
So,
you.
You're welcome. So our job is to help build that bridge. Okay. And so for a person that doesn't understand that connection, for us to do that, not to squash the students and saying, well, no, hallway is not the issue, vaping is. As soon as we do that, we lost them. Forget it.
I feel like we should put that on a plaque and mount it on the wall.
I
Our
know.
job is to build the bridges. Ashley, you've been quiet, and I know you're one of those people who usually likes to not work past 5, but do you have any challenges that you're facing right now that we can talk about a little bit? We can workshop?
No challenges. And I was just thinking about the thing that you were talking about with the making the connection for the administrators. It's also a great opportunity to have the youth come in and talk about it. And so explaining to the youth that connection between the chaos in the hallways and substance use, but then also bringing them to the administrators, because oftentimes we don't translate the message well. And I think it's much more impactful coming from the youth. So I use my youth voice as much as possible. And I put them in front of administrators and teachers and parents. And I always reinforce to my youth that they are the true experts. I am too old and too far removed to understand what they're going through, and that they can be the ones that explain that. So that's just kind of how I make that link for them.
When you're serving the youth in that way and empowering them, I think oftentimes our job is to be a sounding board and help them maybe identify some keywords that are hot button for administration right now, and help them form their message and get comfortable with delivering it. Because a lot of times young people that I work with have said, well, they don't want to listen to me. They don't care about what I say. They don't value what I have to say. There's no reason. I'm not going to bother. It is what it is. I'll be out of here in a few years. So how do you equip, or how do you overcome that apathy, I guess?
I just put the kids in, like I give them all of the training. So we, like, if they're going to present, we go through it ad nauseum. Like, what are you going to say? How are you going to, I mean, they practice for their peers, they give each other feedback so that they go in completely prepared and they feel confident on the front end. And then usually it just takes one interaction for them to realize, oh, they do listen to me. And they understand pretty quickly that if they are presenting to, whether it's state legislators or administrators or parents, that they're going to have their attention right away. And then they go back and tell their other peers, hey, I did this presentation, it went super well. So it's that combination of preparing them, but also putting them in that situation to see that they're going to be listened to.
I think one of the most important skills that we can develop in and with our students is how to seek attention appropriately. Oftentimes they have something to say. They always have something to say. They have something on their hearts, on their minds that's really impacting them. And then they try to tell somebody in inappropriate ways at an inappropriate time, and they get shut down because as an adult, there are times when I just can't hear it right now. I just can't deal with one more issue. And so helping the young people in our lives recognize the appropriate ways to seek attention, to get that time in place and to be prepared is really helpful. Not to shut them down in any way, but just to help them recognize that skill moving forward. And when we're at a certain age, Middle school, during middle school, we usually recognize that the world is bigger than just those we're in contact with on a regular basis, that there are things going on outside of our lives that impact other people, that limit their ability to be responsive to our needs. And I wouldn't start that at elementary school. I wouldn't start that in early middle school, but I would start helping them recognize and build that specific skill so that they can be their own advocates in appropriate ways and get the good positive results that we're looking for.
One of the things that I do when I work with students and prepare them to, go to the principal with a presentation of a project that they want to do, I prepare them to ask the question, if the principal were to say the word no, I prepare the students to ask the question, what would you approve on our idea list? Or what would you approve on our project? Rather than just, taking the no, being mad, feeling like they don't listen to me, but having the maturity to pose the question, principal so-and-so, what would you approve from our plan? And that's huge because it allows the principal to know right away the students are serious. They're serious and they really want to make this happen. And so they'll work with them.
It's rarely all or nothing. And so when we can continue to build that relationship and to empower students to advocate for themselves, you are building skills, whether they get to implement everything they wanted or not. So, recognizing that our end game is not implementing a program, right? Focus on your goals of healthier communities, more supported youth, more engaged, right? Chris, I know last week was kind of a tough week. Are you doing better this week? Are there things going on with youth engagement that you were hoping to address tonight?
No, I'm still in probably an overwhelmed state. Getting along with it fine, I guess, but yeah, it's just a lot of paperwork coming across my desk and amidst direct service, and it's always difficult to do both at the same time. I guess that's really what happens to me a lot is find myself doing administrative work at the same time that I'm doing direct service, and I still haven't figured out how to juggle that, and it just overwhelms me. So that's the hazard of being a prevention specialist, I think. That multitasking craziness that we all get involved in. I am male, and so I don't do it as well as most everyone else, I would imagine, in this spot. But yeah, it's difficult to do planning when there's so much going on, and that's what my biggest struggle is.
I think that people like you and me like to keep our nose to the grindstone when there's so much going on, and we get sometimes bogged down in the details of I have to do this right now, and then we don't look up and say a month from now I need to have all this paperwork done, or 2 weeks from now I need to make sure I've got that data entry done. So I hear you. I feel that stress as well, and then you get bogged down and it feels overwhelming. But Louise and Dawn, you were both nodding along there. Do either of you have something encouraging or a tip or advice?
I wish I had the answer. But no, you're right. When you wear a lot of hats, when you're the direct service person and the grant writer, the grant reports, and all the admin stuff, it does. It gets tiring. But you have to try to do more of the direct service and being with the students, because that's where the energy is. And the more you're able to do that, it makes the paperwork and all that seem worth it. That's the advice I would give. Try to do more as you can with working with the students, because they're your energy.
Definitely good reminder. The I get overwhelmed by the details, and doing direct service doesn't require a lot of detail usually. So I agree totally and appreciate the wisdom.
And I'm nodding along because I'm right there with you, Don. I wish I had the answer. And if somebody else does, please unmute and tell me too. Because I think I'm in the same boat. And Ruth, we're kind of similar as well. It's that nose to the grindstone. And something I've still a work in progress, but have been trying to do more of, because I'm wearing too many hats and there are only so many hours in the day. How do I get it all done? And I think something that I'm trying to do more of is empowering others to help me and to start sharing that. And I, we have this trust or this understanding of what other people are capable of. And there are some things we can't delegate. I can't necessarily give somebody else all the paperwork that I need to get done and submit, or dealing with, balancing budgets and signing things for our financial accountant. Some of those things, is stuck on my plate. But what can I pass along? We mentioned at the beginning of the conversation or during introductions, Allison, who is on the call as our intern, is helping with strategic planning. She's a college student, but she is more than capable of doing some of that work. And so what is on your plate that you could empower high schoolers or youth in general, college students, young adults, coalition members, volunteers, other stakeholders, champions in the community? I always talk about who is the champion. And so is there another person that you could kind of champion to help lead or facilitate, or, oh, you have this fantastic idea, I love it, can you help me by getting to, point B from A to B in the next week, and then I can help pick it up from there, or like, let's tag team and some of that kind of stuff. That's my saving grace. But again, if others have additional ideas, I'm happy to hear those as well.
Good point too.
Thank
Good
you.
leaders are good delegators. And Chris, you've got Wanda, you've got Maurice, you've got people that you're in the process of working with and building up. And just like Louise said, recognize what you can do and must do. Make sure you get those done first and you prioritize. But if you can enable and equip other people to help with some of that and delegate it, you're going to be saving yourself time down the road. I had a great conversation yesterday with Penny Corbin, and she was talking about the same thing. She feels like she has so much on her plate right now, and she doesn't want to add one more thing, but it's such a great opportunity. And she came to the conclusion that we're stronger when we empower others. We're able to do more when we've empowered others. It takes longer to start up, to train somebody to do the work. And Dawn and I talked about this in the podcast too. It takes more energy up front. But in the long run, you're strengthening your community, you're strengthening your prevention coalition, because it's not all hanging on you. Our job, our responsibility, and we talked about this earlier, Kelly, right? Build relationships. Build relationships so that you have people you can trust around you to handle some of this stuff. We are all limited on our time and our abilities, on our mental capacity, as well as our physical time, right? So remember that, prioritize. And everybody that I've ever worked with in the social work field, everybody I've ever worked with, I'm just going to go ahead and make that an absolute, has had trouble saying no. Recognize your limits, tell people no. If you need extensions on things, ask for extensions. If you can simplify things, make it more simple, do less work. My grandpa always said, work smarter, not harder.
Well, if that doesn't work out as well as I need it to, I'll just have to resort to having fun.
Take those breaks every once in a while, right? Build
Right.
that self-care time in. All right, so if you are a McBAP certified individual or in that process, you should be familiar with prevention ethics. It is our ethical obligation to take care of ourselves. You need to practice what you preach, and that is your ethical obligation. So Chris, if there's not a better argument for that, let me know. But absolutely, you must be taking care of yourself and recognizing that your well-being is critical to the well-being of your coalition, to the well-being of your organization, to the well-being of the youth that you're working with. If you are their safe person to talk to, if you are their strength and their pillar and their non-parental unit that they feel safe with, you need to protect yourself and carve out time to take care of your well-being as well. I feel like I've rambled quite a bit. Amanda was putting things in the chat box again. Boundaries, I just had to read a book on that because I didn't know how to make boundaries. Too much yes and not enough no. Take care of yourself first. Can't help others if you're not taking care of yourself. So I think if you've ever taken a mental health first aid class, they tell you it's a lot like taking care of yourself in an airplane when the oxygen masks drop down. If the cabin depressurizes, get that the oxygen mask on yourself first before you get it on your passenger, whoever you're traveling with.
And I think sometimes with that, it's difficult when funding opportunities come up and we really want to take that funding opportunity, but then we have to stop ourselves and think about what is my capacity to devote to this? How much money is it? How much like reporting requirements go into it? And there have been times I've had to say to my agency, I don't have the capacity to do this. I'm sorry. We cannot apply for this grant because I don't have time for it. So I think sometimes that's really hard too, because our funding is so low sometimes, and we're fighting that battle and we want whatever funding comes up and comes available. But then we take it and then we're like, crap, now I'm working how many more hours to make this work?
Bill, you took yourself off mute. Do you want to share and maybe kind of wrap up for us our comment section for tonight? I'll take that as a no. All right. Are there any other thoughts? I'll be sending out a survey tomorrow, and this is not going to be a reflection on me so much as the benefits of this group. I'll be sending a survey out in the morning, just asking for 1 minute feedback of, is this useful to you? Will you implement anything you've learned? What can I do better as a facilitator for this group? And then also, if there are specific concerns or challenges, I know Paige, you had said we need to probably troubleshoot one of those issues that with you. Let me know. I want to thank everybody tonight and give you one last opportunity to share anything else that's on your minds.
Well, this Bill Amundson, I've been quiet, but I've been listening. This youth stuff is brand new to our organization, and so I don't know what we're going to do or can do with it, but I'm here to learn. At one time, the council hired an Olympian athlete to go around to schools, and they trained him for large groups in schools. I don't know what they call that anymore, but when they asked the kids to come to the gymnasium for a program, whatever that's called, and he spoke about prevention and those kind of things. That was years and years and years and years ago, and we've not done anything since. So there's another option. I don't know how we can use that in prevention, but it's an idea anyway.
Yeah, there are several ideas of ways we can engage and places we can engage with youth that we haven't talked about. The Boy Scouts 2 years ago wanted statewide training for mental health first aid for all of their volunteers and leaders. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of America, great opportunity. Our 4-H programs, specifically for rural areas, are kind of the standalone after-school programming available in most places that are completely rural in the state. So working with our 4-H programs. But yeah, there are a lot of opportunities out there. And then looking at the online community, I graduated high school in 2001. I have a classmate who graduated with me who does TikTok. She's fantastic. That's not within my realm of comfortable things. But if you have somebody who within your coalition does TikTok, incorporate that into what you can do. Recognize the skills and abilities that are out there and look for new ways to engage with youth. So.
Can I ask one question just of the group and just to see if anything comes back? Our Career Center has asked me a couple of times about teaching the health sciences students mental health first aid, but they're too young. Some of them are just too young. You can't do youth mental health first aid, and teen mental health first aid won't work because of the length of time that they're in that class and the format that it is. So if anybody has any ideas of what I could present to them, I'd be interested in finding out, because I just don't want to leave them with nothing.
What's the curriculum space that you have to work with, Kelly? What are the parameters on number of weeks and hours per minutes per week?
Well, that I guess I really don't know that, because they know that mental health first aid would be like a 1-day class. So I would think it's a couple of hours a day that they're together. So maybe over a month, or even one class. I'm really not,
And what age group is that?
They would be 15 to 17. Some of them closer to 18, yeah.
Okay. And so we know that mental health first aid can be broken up into, with permission, 2-hour segments.
Right. But some of them are just too young.
Okay. So if there are suggestions for curriculum that would fit 15 to 17 to almost 18-year-olds, a couple hours a week over, is it a semester?
Yeah.
So if you have suggestions of a curriculum that could fit for mental health education on those topics, let us know. Pass that along. Thank you, Paige. Have a great night. All right. Kelly, if anybody gets back to me with information on that, I will pass it along to you.
Thank you.
I wanted to give a special thank you to Dawn for taking time at the end of her day to join us tonight. If there are specific things working with Student Leadership Services, they have their conference coming up in March.
Yes.
And they also facilitate trainings for youth and for adults working with youth. So check slstoday.org, look at Prevention Network. We've got links to those workshops. Take a look at the CADCA Michigan community. We do have that updated announcement about the youth conference. And if anybody's going from the Detroit area, groups from there are looking for transportation cooperation on costs. So that's going up to Shanty Creek, I believe, right, Don?
Yep, Shanty Creek.
All right, any last words? Thank you, everybody. Go
Thank you.
ahead, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth.
Allison. I'm gonna stay on. I usually stay in case people have questions.
I don't know if they have any questions, but mine's just about the spreadsheet, so not about the workshop. But I don't think anyone does. Okay, so you sent it to me, and
Real quick, I want to address something Amanda dropped in the chat box, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
see you mentioned Barb Smith, and she does a lot with suicide prevention. So Amanda, was there anything else there that you wanted to share?
Nope, I just wanted to let you know that I threw that in. I don't know if that would help her or not. Or maybe she might have a suggestion of some kind of program that she could do in the schools. But that would be the best person that I could think of for that.
Right, and I know they've worked with Barb Smith in Santa Ana County schools before. That's where she's located. And so I think it's just a matter of cost. It's fairly expensive to have her go in and do those full presentations.
Right. Yeah.
Good
I'll
thought.
talk to Barry too and see if there's anything that